God has prepared for them a severe retribution. Therefore, you shall reverence God, O you who possessed intelligence and believed. God has sent to you a reminder. Okay, these verses, again, the words, every word in the Quran is specific and it's there for a reason. It's not just there to take up space. And here the past tense is used because we know that the decision was made before we ever came into this dimension. So we possess, those of us who possess intelligence, even though we blew it because we wavered, we didn't take an absolute stand for God. Still, we didn't do what the jinns did and just totally disbelieved. So we did show some intelligence, and we believed. And God sends us reminders. He sends us the messages, He sends us the scriptures and the messengers to recite the scriptures and to clarify things as a reminder, because just because we made that initial decision doesn't guarantee that we're not going to make mistakes and go out of God's kingdom. So we have to be constantly reminded about God's laws, about we have to exhort each other to be righteous. We have to remind each other to do certain things, to give charity. We have to remind each other and ourselves, because it's really easy to forget in your day-to-day life when we're out in the environment where people disbelieve, and it's very easy to fall into that and to forget, and we need that constant reminder. Are there any questions so far up to this point?
Yes. No, it says provide, you pay, because it's your responsibility. A nursing mother? Because still the divorced wife may want to refuse to nurse the children, say, I'm not going to do anything anymore. You take care of the baby. Then you can hire a nursing mother. So you have to think of the circumstances of divorce. They're straightforward instructions. Yeah. Because you're telling her, you cannot get married. You're telling her, since you're carrying my baby, you cannot get married. When you say that, then you have to put your money where your mouth is. That's how we say the expression. When you say that, you have to provide for them. Yeah, she may be doing a favor because maybe she can't stand the circumstances, or you, or the house, or she may go on strike. It's all right. We're coming to which verse did you finish? 11. I want to finish the whole surah, and then I have a couple of comments. This is Surah 65.
Verse 11. A messenger who recites to you God's revelations clearly, in order to lead those who believe and work righteousness out of the darkness into the light. Anyone who believes and leads a righteous life, He will admit him into gardens with flowing streams. They abide therein forever. God will generously reward them. Again, we're told here that the messenger recites God's revelations. He's just the disperser of information, the clarifier, the warner, the reminder. The revelations are God's, the commandments are God's, the laws are God's laws. And the messenger is sent as a mercy to us to lead us out of the darkness and into the light, because otherwise we wouldn't do what we were supposed to do, and we're going to be held accountable. And God is so merciful that He doesn't do that. He doesn't hold us accountable unless He gives us every chance that He can possibly give us. So we have the scriptures, we have the messengers, we have all of these things at our disposal to make the right decision. And when we do it, then we're guaranteed not only in this life happiness, but eternal happiness, forever. And the rewards are generous. We don't have to worry about it at all. And it's just so clear. And I think these verses, even though they're only a few, like Rashad said, are so profound because you can't find any fault in any of them. You may not personally agree because you have a different outlook or something, but you can't find fault in any of these verses. They make perfect sense because they're from God. God is omniscient. Verse 12, God created 7 universes and the same number of earths. The commands flow among them. This is to let you know that God is omnipotent and that God is fully aware of all things. And if you look at the footnote at the bottom of the page, it said, this page, I don't know about your page. It says, although God created 6 other planets that are identical to our Earth, there is life only on our planet. Thus, the evolutionists will be shown on the Day of Judgment that life did not just evolve on the planet because of its particular circumstances. We know that the Earth was created as Satan's dominion, and that's why there's life, and we are his constituents, and we are here temporarily to repent for our initial transgression and to develop our souls to be able to return to God and withstand his presence. And that's not necessary on any of the other in any of the other universes. So life is just on Earth. Comments?
Questions? Okay, the comments that I wish to make on Surah 65, verse 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, number 8 is rebelling against God's laws and commandments. Messengers come to remind us of these laws, like the mosque belongs to God, do not mention any other name besides God. This is a law. And when they rebel, it's a sign that retribution is coming to them fast. This is what verse 8 is saying. Many a community rebelled against God's law and against his messengers. Consequently, we held them strictly responsible or accountable and afflicted them with a terrible retribution. So it's coming to all those who are not following God's law. And number 10, God has prepared severe retribution. Therefore you shall observe righteousness, O you who possess intelligence and believe. God has sent his message to you. Now number 11 is really the one that I want to emphasize here because it's written, I don't know if I put in past tense here, 11, past tense, I believe. Okay, here I don't have it in past. It is in the past tense that the messenger leads those who believed and led the righteous life out of darkness into the light. So these are people who believe and work righteousness, but they're still in the darkness. The messenger cannot do anything to those who don't believe, but he helps those who did believe and did lead the righteous life out of darkness into the light. It's a very important concept. Anyone who believes in God and works righteousness, God will admit him into gardens with flowing streams. This fits with verse about 11 in Surah 10 that says that God guides those who believe because of their belief. So when we make a decision to believe in God, then God will create circumstances and will help us to lead us out of darkness into the light. And this follows believing and leading a righteous life. Number 12 is very important in this age of evolution-creation debates. Evolution is a divinely guided process. Evolution is a fact. It is a scientific fact and it is a Quranic fact. I'm going to have an appendix on it. When you read the appendix, you'll see that evolution is perfectly alright. But it is a divinely guided process. The fly has 4,000 lenses in each eye. 4,000. It did not evolve into 10,000. It did not evolve into X-ray vision. For millions of years, it is 4,000 lenses in each eye. But there are varieties of flies. Within the same species, there is evolution within the same species. We got the navel orange out of the regular oranges. All of a sudden we have this wonderful orange without any seeds, tastes good, but it came from another orange tree, not from an apple tree. So it's from the same species. There's evolution within the species. But every species was created independently. But the point that I want to emphasize here that you need to remember that God created 7 earths identical to this earth. And the statistical laws bear this out. But there is no life on them. Because on the day of judgment, which is the most important day, that's the eternal day when all the people past, present and future will be there. We will all be there and we will all witness that there were 6 other earths like this one, but no life on any of them. Because what the evolutionists, the atheist evolutionists say, because we are believing evolutionists, they are atheist evolutionists. The atheist evolutionists say that life evolved out of nothing here on this earth because of the circumstances, because of the amino acids, the lightning, the ethylene, and all the other nitrogen and stuff.
That's the Big Bang Theory?
No, it's not the Big Bang Theory. Big Bang Theory is confirmed in the Quran. The evolution, Darwin's theory, that life evolved on this earth, and this is how our eyes came into being. That this eye was a depression in a photosensitive cell, a depression in the skin that kept evolving until it gave the eyes. But I wonder why we have the eyes here and not in our hands, for example. So this is the purpose of creating 6 other earths, identical to this one. Pardon?
You close the eyes and walk, you can see with eyes.
You have eyes in your feet, Laila?
I think so. I think you can breathe.
Well, that's a step in evolution, but still within the species. You're still a human being. Any questions on Surah 65? Oh yes, this is, what is Pupak? Pupak. How come you're so quiet? Pupak discovered the mistake in the new translation on this page 559. And of course you know the rule. God doesn't make mistakes. If there's any mistake, it is our mistake. Be specific, it's my mistake. Okay, I forgot to put one word God here. The count at the bottom of the page is all right. It's right. But as you know, at the bottom of the page, I have the count of the word God on the left side, and the total up to this page on this side. So the reader can participate in the mathematical code of the Quran and realize this is God speaking to him or her. So I forgot, there is one statement. I forget where it is now. Number 8. Many a community rebelled against the commands.
It says here, it says God's law.
Okay, yeah, so that's it. It's in verse 8, I believe. But anyway, we will fix it. These are unedited pages. Lisa hasn't got to that point yet, right? Lisa and Emily? Oh, Emily marked it. Yeah, so we're still working with unedited pages. But the count is perfect, and we just made a typing error. Sleep.
Yeah, I would like to make a regression to verse number 7.
Okay.
Specifically to that. Aside from what I understand, aside from the net, if I can put it that way, of the housing provided to the wife in case the man asks for divorce, I don't see, I can't prevent my mind thinking somehow rational more than spiritual. I try to stretch my spiritual.
Yeah.
But I go through my rational anyway. And I see, for example, in verse 7, there's so much room for interpretation in case of divorce, and even as to what is rich, what is poor.
Yeah,
and
thank
how
God.
much of that, that wealth should go to the woman and or to the man.
Thank
There's
God.
so much room for interpretation. I'm just wondering how practical conflicts are being resolved. Can you please, let me on that?
Well, it's really straightforward, but you said it is the rational, it is common sense. There's a rich man and a poor man. When there is divorce, there's compensation. You must compensate the wife, the divorced wife. And you must provide for her for at least 1 year. This is in Surah 4.
Let's assume there is a difference in opinion, in evaluation.
Okay, there's a husband who's a millionaire and a husband who hand to mouth. So how will they provide this alimony? Right. That's what the verses say. It's according to your. It's strictly between you and God, really. You don't have to apply any of these laws, but you bear the responsibility. See?
There is a disagreement between who arbitrates the conflict. How are the conflicts arbitrated?
It's strictly between you and God. It's like everything else, like praying or fasting or drinking or gambling. All things are strictly between you and God. God is telling you these laws. If you want to be happy, follow them. If you want to be miserable, don't follow them. It's as simple as that. So if you are rich and you divorce your wife, you must provide according to your wealth. If you are poor, then God is merciful. He's telling you can only provide as much as you can.
But there is no immediate remedy as to whether it's fair or unfair. There is no immediate remedy to that.
It has to be fair.
I understand that if it's not, there is no immediate remedy. That's basically what we are confronted with.
Well, in Surah 4 there is arbitration. Surah 4, not verse 4. Surah 4.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Surah 4 there is arbitration. There is provision for everything. There are details. Surah 4 is Surah 4 is the second longest surah in the Quran, and it has a lot more details. But see, these are basic rules. And just like you said, we really use our rationale, our common sense. We're doing all right. Use your rationale.
I can't, whenever I start to, I try to use only my spiritual, somehow I end up, using my rationale at the same time.
There's no contradiction. The spiritual and rational must go together. But we have a tendency to make things difficult for ourselves. The Quran says that. The Quran says, if we listen to you, you'll make things more miserable and difficult for yourselves. So God said the rich compensates according to his wealth, and the poor compensates according to his abilities. And this is it's merciful that he didn't say you have to give this much or this proportion.
But when I was in Saudi Arabia, I knew that there were some cases dealt with by religious
Judges, yeah. What did they do?
Well, basically they refer, to the Quran, to resolve these kind of disputes. It's very much comparable to,
The Western laws?
System,
Did you see anything?
Laws, to written laws. These are, the Quran is taken as a written law, and assuming it can serve the same purpose.
But you see, the more the human being is educated, the more he comes closer to the Quran. The more knowledge they acquire, the more. They're just about to prohibit alcohol, for example. And here's a drunk captain who polluted Alaska because of alcohol. The whole country knows the evils of alcohol. So when they look in the Quran, they say alcohol is prohibited. It matches the common sense, it matches the knowledge. This man had a 10-mile wide channel. They said a child can maneuver this super tanker through those 10 miles. But he's not even a child. He's passed out.
There was a huge crew, though. There wasn't just him. There was a huge crew, too, that wasn't drunk.
I bet you the crew was drunk also. I think it takes a clever captain to hit those rocks.
Either that or they were looking for an excuse to raise the price.
No, they wouldn't do that. No, the guy was drunk, So what I'm saying is that the more knowledge the human being acquires, the closer they get to God's laws. On their own.
Aren't you going to go as far as getting the advice of the judges? Because after all, we are human. And when it comes to dividing your own wealth, you may be a little bit subjective. So I just listened to you and you mentioned the someone has to pass the judgment on the wealth of a guy. If it's left up to the first man, which is a millionaire, whatever, very wealthy, someone has to step in and ask the wife, bring the checkbook.
Well, remember that the believers' affairs are decided by consultation. We're talking about believers. If they're believers, they will be fair, and they will consult, and they will maintain. Again, in Surah 4, like Lori mentioned, God emphasizes the amicable relations. So a husband and wife didn't get along together and decided to part. You don't have to be enemies. In fact, God says, you must maintain the amicable relations among you. So there will be mutual consultation and mutual contentment.
Well, realistically, you mentioned about the alcohol.
Right.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be there, it should be prohibited. But the reality, I'm talking about the nowadays life. I'm imagining the Ethiopia.
Hamid, you hung up on the time of applicability of the Quran. The Quran is applicable through any time, till the end of the world. Not nowadays.
Are you saying we do not need Islamic judges? Is that the content of my argument is this? Should we go to someone or...
No, actually, we do need Islamic judges. I didn't say that. Yeah. Because the general public will not be as familiar with the Quran as they should be or as they need to be. So the Islamic judges are needed. I hit somebody's car, and then, so how much do I compensate that person? Then we both go to the Islamic judge, and the person whose car I hit, he will say, this cost me $800 to fix, and I lost 8 hours of work, and this and this. Then the judge will calculate that, and will tell me to compensate the person.
I thought you said if you are a believer, we just revise the here and check.
You'll do that too, but then if there is, remember the judge is needed when there is dispute. The judges are needed when there is dispute. If the person knows what he's doing, you don't need a judge. Maximum freedom is guaranteed in the Quran also. Let's go to 66 and Lori. Anybody is saying something? Yes. 66.
Verse 1. O you prophet, why do you prohibit what God has made lawful for you, just to please your wives? God is forgiver, merciful. God has decreed for you the laws dealing with your oaths. God is your Lord, and He is the omniscient, most wise. The prophet had trusted some of his wives with a certain statement. Then one of them spread it, and God let him know about it. He then informed his wife of part of the issue, and disregarded part. She asked him, who informed you of this? He said, I was informed by the omniscient, most cognizant. If the two of you repent to God, then your hearts would listen. But if you band together against him, then God is his ally, and so is Gabriel and the righteous believers. Also the angels are his helpers. If he divorces you, God will substitute other wives in your place, who are better than you, submitters, Muslims, believers, mu'mins, obedient, repentant, worshippers, pious, either previously married or virgins. O you who believe, protect yourselves and your families from the hellfire, whose fuel is people and rocks. Guarding it are tough and powerful angels who never disobey God. They do whatever they are commanded to do. O you who disbelieve, do not apologize today. You are being requited only for what you did. In the first verse down at the footnote, says that Mohammedans around the world believe that Muhammad was infallible. This verse teaches us that he was indeed a fallible human being, and there are a number of verses cited that will back this up. The messenger is given the responsibility to deliver the messages, and when he does that, he is in accordance with God's laws, and those things are preserved. But the messenger is also a human being, and is subject to the same test that everybody else is subject to, and even greater test, because with the responsibility comes the test. And God made it this way so that we would not worship the messengers. That's God's system. if the messenger were perfect, then he would be God. So it doesn't make any sense. The messengers are just humans. Their only job is to deliver the message, to clarify. They are sent as a mercy from God to give the information to the rest of us. So they're going to make mistakes. And again, this is to weed out those who would turn away because the messenger isn't perfect. We know the history of Moses, and he went to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said, why should I listen to you? You stutter. You're one of our slaves. Even though Moses showed him all these miracles, it didn't make any difference. But that was God's will. We have to believe God and not the messenger. And we know what happened. The Christians, who worship Jesus because it wasn't enough that he was a messenger. They wanted to make him a God besides God. And it's the same thing with Muslims who worship Muhammad and they think that he was perfect. And there are all these myths and stories and legends that about him that don't even make any sense. He was just a man. And God is very careful in the Quran to point out his errors to us, like Shah says, not to scandalize him. I mean, God doesn't get anything from that, but to make us realize that he was a man and don't worship him. He was just a man. Listen to the message. It doesn't make any difference. The messengers all come with the same message, every one of them. And it's God's intent that they do make mistakes and they are imperfect so that we won't worship them. And to weed out those who will not listen to the messenger because they don't like him or they think that he's not perfect. And the next verses, again, there isn't anything. I remember one time in one of our discussions in Quranic study many, many years ago, there were some people from another mosque and they were talking about the Hadith and Sunnah. The importance of it was because it was history. And, if you read the Quran is the greatest history. We know what people think. We know what people thought. We know what they did under the tree and they got together and the things that were in their minds. It's the greatest history. And we know here about what happened to his wives. He told them something and they went and spread it. I mean, so this is God telling us this. And it's a lesson for all of us. And we're not supposed to. We're not supposed to gossip. We're not supposed to slander. If something is entrusted to us, we're supposed to respect that and take heed. And you can't hide from God. She asked, how did you know? And he said, well, I know from God. You can't get away from anything. God is omnipotent. He's omniscient. He told in verse 4 to repent. And that the messenger is protected against these things. And even if everybody banded together against him, God is saying that God is his ally, and so are Gabriel and the righteous believers. And as far as reasons for divorce, if he divorces you, in this case because of their behavior, then God will make it up to him. He'll give him a better wife. What we were talking about earlier is that with difficulty there is ease, and if you have to suffer in some way for the cause of God, it's always made up to you. You're always rewarded because God is most gracious. And in verse 6, we're admonished to protect ourselves and our families from the hellfire. And how do we do that? We do it by, number one, being responsible for ourselves, obeying God's laws, obeying the commandments, fulfilling all of our religious duties, but also seeing to it that our families do the same thing. Parents have to make sure their children know how to do the prayers, make sure that the children do the prayers when it's time for them to fast, to make sure that they fast. Spouses have to, help each other do the right thing. We all need to help each other because we all have the same weaknesses. And we're told here that once we get to the day of judgment, there are angels who never disobey God. And every command will be carried out. And nobody will have any power to do anything else. And on that day, we'll be told well, God willing, not we, but those who disbelieve will be told not to apologize, that they're just being repaid for what they did. Again, it all comes back to us. God has given us free will. The decision was ours. Once we made that decision, He helped us along in whatever that decision was. If we chose to disbelieve, He helps the disbelievers disbelieve. He actually leads them astray. If this is their decision, then He helps them in that decision. If we choose to believe, then He helps us in our belief. He gives us the messages, the revelations, the steps to do what we have to do. And God is just. We're only requited for what we did. We're not held responsible for anybody else's sins. A wife is not held responsible for her husband's sins. Parents aren't held responsible for their children's sins. We have to be responsible for our own selves, and everybody is. Any questions or comments on this section?
How far can we go, should we go as far as pursuing the kids or husband to pray or fasting or any of those help?
Well, obviously, you can only do so much. You can tell them to do it. You can set the example. You can make sure they do it up to a certain point. But at some point, everybody is responsible for themselves. But, if you want your children to get up and pray the morning prayer, and it's hard for them to do it, you might have to really work with them to do it. Maybe not allow them to have their breakfast or something until they do their morning prayer. Or,
They are children and they are not responsible. My point is this. Do you go as far as waking them up and lining them up and say, well, pray?
Do you have the translation, this translation with you?
The new one?
That's the one that you have there?
No, that's...
Yeah.
Okay, open page 218. That's the answer to your question. The old one, the book 218, page 218. Verse 132. It's very important, actually. This is Hamid's question. Is very important. Remember it and do it. What do you do with your children? You want to read it for us, Hamid?
Pardon me?
Read verse 132.
142. You shall exhort your family to observe the Salat prayer and persist in doing so. We do not ask you for any provision. It is us who provides for you. The final victory belongs to the righteous.
So there's the answer to the question. It says you order them, exhort them to pray and persist in doing so. Because you're doing God's commandment, God controls your heart and their hearts, and everything will go just wonderful. But you just have to exhort them. You have to keep telling them. My children are grown up now, but when they were young, I will ask them. They're willingly doing the prayers, but I had to remind them every day. If I don't carry out God's commandment, and I wait until 2 in the afternoon and ask them, did you pray the noon? No, we will go pray. But there were no problems. Here's one of them.
So they were under your umbrella, economically.
Yes.
But let's say, you didn't actually give them a choice. Taking the circumstances into account, they didn't have a choice. They said, well...
Yes, they did.
Okay.
They did.
All right.
They could have said, no, we're not going to do it. But they didn't. It just didn't come up. I always said, let's pray, and they'll pray. And like I said, God controls the whole situation. You just do your part, and God will do the rest.
I'm sorry, I can't really go along with this. We are not in control.
Don't.
I mean...
You don't have to.
No, I realize that every time I come here and say, well, this life is pre-recorded, and we have absolutely no decision-making power, and we are not responsible because everything is pre-recorded. And
I didn't say that, but go ahead.
I think every day you come to many decisions. You have to make a decision. You have to pass a judgment.
Right.
And you are...
okay, your question is, what do I do with my children, right?
Right.
The answer is right there in verse 132.
Okay,
it says you exhort them to pray and persist in doing so.
At that point. I'm saying, can you really say
What else are you going to do? What? I mean, what? Why are you being negative? Why don't you? Are you assuming that they will say no, right?
I'm playing the advocate. I'm saying the guy says, well, I don't want to pray.
What? No. If they say that, then come back and ask me the question. But I say, when you do your part, they will, because this has been my experience.
Do you leave the choice to him or not?
Yes.
So if that has a choice, say, well, I ain't going to pray.
Absolutely. But they never said no. You have to keep saying. I mean, it just never came up that they said no, we're not going to pray.
Well, good for you, but there are.
Those circumstances will not happen if you carry out God's commandment. Brothers and sisters, we are living experience, okay? We speak from experience. God provided, not just my experience, all of our experiences. I raised 2 kids, right? One of them is right there. They're all grown up now. But throughout their life, I carried out this commandment. I told them to pray. And it was never once did they say, no, we'll not pray. It just didn't come up. So what I'm saying is, you just do the commandment that God gave you, and everything goes fine. However, if I was lax in doing this commandment, if I'm not persisting in doing it, they will go without prayer. So I will ask them, I'll tell them to pray, and they wait 3 or 4 days, and if I don't say pray, I will notice that they passed up the time for prayer.
Well, as much as I admire your children and agree with basically what you said, but still in our lives there are points, there are certain times that you reject, even the God. Even you reject Him, you say, well, I have some doubt.
You're entitled to do that.
Well, okay, those are actually the points I was making my argument.
You're talking about you or the children?
Well, anybody. Haven't you ever doubted God?
Me?
In your evolution?
I don't think I ever did. But I wasn't right the whole time. I was an idol worshiper for a long time. But I never doubted God. However, anybody is entitled to doubt God or question God or be an atheist. So am I. I mean, but it just happened that I didn't. Okay. So let's take a time when you doubt God. You say God doesn't exist.
Okay, then therefore you are not going to pray.
Right.
You're saying, well,
nor are you going to carry this commandment. You will not do this commandment.
You are
your life will be a mess.
Not necessarily.
Oh yes, necessarily.
No, if you doubt God, you're
it's in the same surah. See? In the same surah.
Well, let me, while you are finding that, let me remind people here.
Tell us to keep her for 20 more minutes. We'll pay her more, yeah.
God, Lord, as I understand.
See, there is a law, Hamid. Let me give you the Quranic law. Okay, God says, you follow my laws, you're going to have a happy life. You disregard my message, you're going to have a miserable life. That's what God says.
Exactly.
So there is no way around it.
Within His authority.
Right.
He gives you the mind which He never gave to none of His creatures, and that is the choice that in your lifetime you're going to make. Back and forth.
Okay.
Until you get to as close as you can get to Him. In this process, as we just noticed, like yourself, you said you were atheist, or in my
No, I was not an atheist. I was never an atheist.
Or
I never doubted God, no. Hamid, I don't like the fact that you ask a question and then we go into other things. Now, your question was, what do I do with the children? Right?
Okay.
I gave you the answer from the Quran. Quran is, you exhort them to follow the commandment and persist in doing so. This is your part. If we're going to go into other philosophical questions, I mean, it goes into something else. So let's wait until the occasion comes up.
Well,
Just for the sake of the people.
Pray, what do you do? Say the prayer so that they
It's for the sake of the other people. So, yeah, Susan wants to.
We keep look at the kids in our own lives. Well, I mean,
Yes.
Sarah, I'm always, my husband Bishop and I, we remind her to pray. Now she wants to get up on her own. We don't even have to tell her anything. She wants to get up and pray. She does her prayers at school. She wouldn't miss a prayer. And there are other kids
MashaAllah.
8 years
You
old.
know, Sarah wants to baptize.
Well, that sometimes happens. Like me, okay, I have a little sister, and I tell her to pray and come to the mosque. She doesn't want to come, but I keep saying it to her, and I think someday she'll come here.
Yes, you bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Francisco did the same thing with me, and I'm here.
Yay.
But the
If you watch our children, see here in the mosque, you see them eagerly and joyfully praying. We join the prayers, so it's no problem.
Doctor, I was just mentioning the choice. I was just emphasizing on that, underlining that. Like his choice left up to the adults, that they can make it. They can make their own decision, even though it's not agreed with my own as a guardian.
See, it is your duty to do this commandment. Okay?
Just pass the message to them and leave it up to them. If
That's
they
right.
want to follow it up, or
That's
they
right.
want to fail.
That's right. But it is your responsibility and your job to point out to them why they should pray, why is it necessary. You see, it is your obligation. You have duties towards your children and your family. You can't just come out of nowhere and say, get up and pray. They're going to tell you why. You say,
I hope
it's
they-
a whole life style that you're doing. You're carrying out God's commandments. But from all, Beth.
I just want to make it clear too that Sam and I are no exception, because I mean when we were real little we prayed because we felt so guilty when you'd ask us if we prayed. We didn't want to lie. So I mean that was the only reason we prayed. And then when we got a little older, if we didn't want to pray, we didn't pray. You know, it just wasn't something that was important to us, and even for a long time we missed the Friday prayers and the Quranic study. And I mean, he didn't argue with us. I mean, he told us, what we should do, but, he didn't punish us if we didn't do it. And it just came to the point when we got a little older that we found out for ourselves, what was the best, what the best thing was for us.
So
And
you
it
just-
comes to you in your heart. Your parents can't interfere with what's between you and God. And I think it comes to a certain age where you find out for yourself.
Actually, if you punish them, they'll hate it. You don't want them to hate religion and prayer and all that. See, all you need to do,
Say your prayers out loud, so they hear it anyway, since they won't get up.
all you need to do is carry out you do your part. And this is at the beginning of the Quran. God says, you do your part, I'll do my part. Shall we go?
Is that a good idea, Rashi?
What? To say the
If
prayer?
you tell them, okay, time to get up for prayer, and then I went from jumping up there, but you just said the prayers out loud, so they have to hear it anyway?
Whatever you need to do to carry out the commandments, God says here.
Then again, we're not supposed to do our prayers too loud or too quiet.
No, she doesn't mean loud, real loud, with the neighbors. Just audible. She means audible.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, where are we now?
Verse 8.
Verse 8. Let's finish Surah 66.
Okay. Okay, we're on verse 8. The believers repent. O you who believe, you shall repent to God, affirm
Affirm repentance.
that is it?
Did you read this before?
No.
Okay.
O you who believe, you shall. O prophet, struggle against the disbelievers and the hypocrites, and be harsh with them. Their abode is Gehenna and a miserable destiny. In verse 8, we're told here to repent, because repentance is our chance. Every day, every hour, we have the opportunity to repent, to wipe out our sins, to start new again. God has given that to us. So what Hamid was saying earlier, that it's a daily decision to stay in God's kingdom. And He knows that we make mistakes. He knows that we break His commandments. And He gives us a chance to overcome that by repentance. And if we do repent and sincerely repent, which means that you don't ever do it again, and you really try to change, then God will remit your sins and admit you into gardens of flowing streams. That's the hereafter. On that day, God will not disappoint the prophet and those who believe with him. Okay, we've been given a promise by God that if we do our part, which is what we were just talking about earlier, if we do our part, God does His part. And we've laughed about this before. There is no better guarantee or warranty than God's. This is proven. We don't have to worry about it. If we do our part, God will do His part. In the Bible, we've talked about the verses in Luke where it says, seek God's kingship over you and I'll also follow. That's all you have to do. Is just do your part and everything else falls into place. And the light will radiate in front of them and to their right. And we know that the light is knowledge, the presence of God. We don't want to be into the darkness. And one of the reasons for the messenger being sent to us is to help us out of the darkness and into the light. That's one of God's mercies. The light is mentioned many, many times in the Quran. And if you just think about it, it's a wonderful allegory because in the darkness you're lost, you can't see, there's fear, confusion. And when you leave that into the light, then everything is made apparent to you. You know what's going on. There's no more fear. And there's some verses in the Quran that on the Day of Judgment, the disbelievers who have been destined for hell will beg for some of that light. They'll be in eternal darkness. And the believers will ask God to perfect that light for them and to forgive them and acknowledge that God is omnipotent. And in verse 9, it's an admonition to the prophet, but again to all of us, to struggle against the disbelievers and the hypocrites and be harsh with them. A lot of times people misunderstand what we do in this mosque. They think that because we say the things that we say, that we're being very unfair, we're being very harsh, we're closed-minded, we're some of the other things they think. But right, this is what God is telling us to do, because it's our responsibility. It's the responsibility of those who have the knowledge to give it to others, okay, and to fight, because it's not your fight, it's God's fight. And if God, says to fight the disbelievers, and that doesn't mean, you go out and you do anything necessarily violent, but there's ways to struggle, okay, with the truth. Rashad publishes from this mosque
Muslim perspective.
And some of the things that are said in
It's
there.
fasting, Glory. It's fasting, does that? What a heavy meal after fasting will do
wow,
that.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
And the things that are said in there are really profound, and they just get everybody upset, but they have to be said. It has to be said. For those who might choose to listen to it, they have the right to hear God's messages, and they have the right to have the message clarified for them, whether their leaders like it or not. It's everybody's right to have that, and it's a constant struggle. And when you think about it, you're really doing them a favor, because if there's any chance that they might hear and listen and repent, then they'll be spared that terrible destiny of hell. So it's for their own good, even though they dislike it. That's just human nature. Do you want me to go on?
Yeah, let's finish this.
Okay.
Let me just comment, since it's very important to notice in verse 8 that it says, "O you who believe, repent to God, a sincere repentance." This is directed to the believers, because the believers make mistakes. I mean, the disbelievers, that's a hopeless case. But it is the believers who repent. And strive against the disbelievers and the hypocrites is for their own good, like Lori said. In another surah, God says, in fact it's Surah 4, it happens to be, God says, here you are defending them in this life. Who's going to be their advocate in the hereafter? So it is to their own good that if somebody's going to fall in a ditch, that you hold them by the clothes and shake him up. You be stern, otherwise they'll fall in the ditch. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the myth of intercession shattered. God cites as examples of those who disbelieved the wife of Noah and the wife of Lot. They were married to two of our righteous servants, but they betrayed them, and consequently they could not help them at all against God. The two of them were told, "Enter the hellfire with those who deserved it." Pharaoh's wife, and God cites as an example of those who believe the wife of Pharaoh. She said, "My Lord, build a home for me at you in paradise, and save me from Pharaoh and his works. Save me from the transgressing people." And Mary, also Mary the Amramite, she maintained her chastity, then we blew into her from our spirit. She believed in the words of the Lord and his scriptures. She was obedient. We're told here that there is no such thing as intercession, that each one of us is responsible for our own actions. Okay, here are the wives of Noah and the wives of Lot. Okay, they're prophets, they were righteous, and it doesn't make any difference. Their husbands cannot intercede on their behalf. Nobody can intercede on their behalf. They're going to hell because of their actions for rejecting the messages that the messengers brought, even though they were their husbands. Didn't make any difference.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. And this is very specific. And then in the next verses, it's the opposite. Pharaoh, who was, God just said the most wicked person on earth, he was just so evil and wicked and just transgressed on earth. And this woman was married to him, and it didn't make any difference. She was there, she was stuck in that situation, she couldn't leave, but it didn't make any difference. She believed, and her prayer was for God to give her a place at paradise. And it's okay. You can believe under any circumstances, and she's an example for us. And Mary, the mother of Jesus, her test, she's held up as an example for all the women. She went through incredible tests. To have a son and a messenger and all of these things that she had to go through. And in her time, she was an example. She maintained her chastity, and she believed in God's word. She didn't doubt him when the angel came and said, "You're going to have a child." And she said, "How can I have a child? No man has touched me." And what a thing. And just think if it were you and this happened to you. Talk about panic and just, and she didn't. She just persevered and she did what she had to do. And
those days, you're pregnant, kid.
It was a terrible thing that she had to go through, and she was accused of terrible things, and she just persevered and was steadfast, and she will have her reward. And here she is cited as an example for all time to all people, as an example of a believer. What better reward for her that she has this place in God's history.
Inshallah, good job as usual. God bless you. Congratulations. We have to wait. Dan, sit down. Hey. We're not done yet. We're gonna recite Al-Fatiha twice today. First, Farhad Moini's birthday will be Thursday, so we're gonna celebrate today and next Friday, inshallah, because it's closer to his birthday. But we want to grab this chance to recite Al-Fatiha so God will give him and his wonderful family a great year coming up, and every year to be greater than the previous year, inshallah. God never turns us down. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik Yawm al-Din. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. We read Al-Fatiha for Suad and Ahmed Rayyan, and both of them passed. They made it, alhamdulillah. And we need to read Al-Fatiha now for Frank, who's going to take the state exam, and he needs one of those big Fatihas, so he'll pass inshallah. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Congratulations everybody. Inshallah. Don't lose your Quran now. For the next time we're going to start at 67 next week. Our teacher will be Gatut. Gatut. Huh?